Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm, and you are watching fourth part of What If Naruto Became the Demon Dragon Rider. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Two Chunin from Konoha, Azumo and Kotetsu, were sitting in the guardhouse at the main gate. Kotetsu was drawing in a notebook, and Azumo was watching the area to see who was coming or going from the village. "Have you ever noticed that we almost always do something for the Hokage or sit at this stupid gate?" he asked. "Is there really nothing else we can do?" Kotetsu shrugged. He just said, "Hey, it's easy work." As Azumo sat back down, he sighed. "Yeah, but it's pretty dull. I wish something interesting would just fall in our laps." At that moment, a pretty big toad landed right in front of the gatehouse. Jiraiya jumped off its back and was out of breath. He told the summons, "Thanks," and it just croaked at him and went away. Jiraiya turned and went to the gatehouse. "I'm Jiraiya of the Sannin, and I just got back from a spy mission," he said quickly so they could write him down. Kotetsu did this quickly, and Jiraiya took off like a rocket toward the Hokage's tower. Tsunade sipped her green tea in peace. Things had been getting better recently. The council stopped bothering her about getting more control over the Oni. Kumo got out of the war, and he was already sending them supplies to make up for the people they killed in the things they destroyed. But what really made her happy was that she was getting closer to getting back the girl she had thought of as her daughter. She and Kushina had a nice talk, but it was still stiff. As she took another sip, one of her windows almost slammed open, and Jiraiya almost rolled into the room. He stood up straight and whipped around quickly to face Tsunade, who was growling and had spit tea all over her desk because she was so surprised. She was angry as Jiraiya moved toward the desk. "Is there any reason to scare the crap out of me?" she asked. Jiraiya slammed his hands down on the desk and asked, "Kushina. Is she here?" This made Tsunade blink. "Yes. I sent you a message almost 2 weeks ago." She started to clean up the tea. She was taken from the hospital right after Minato took Naruto to do the sealing. She was sold to an Iwa slave camp, where she was sold to several different owners, until the Demon Dragon Rider saved her. She now works for him. Jiraiya looked out the window and then back at Tsunade. "She's still alive." "Oh, Kami. I need to apologize to her." He turned to go, but Tsunade stopped him. She took out a piece of paper and a pen in case she needed to take notes from his report. Jiraiya nodded slowly. "Iwa and Otto haven't been making any big plans to move their troops, at least not that my spies have found. Akatsuki has been quiet ever since Kakuzu and Hidan were killed. I have heard that some wandering ninjas in a village near the border between Earth and Fire countries have been attacking Iwa raiding posts. It might be worth looking into it to see what we can find to help us." Tsunade nodded. She smiled at him and told him, "Good job. Thank you. I'm glad you're back." He gave a soft smile. "Thanks. I can't say the same, but it's nice to see you again." He left to try to talk to Kushina. Hinata was sitting in the middle of her room at the same time. It had been 3 days since she found out who the Demon Dragon Rider really was. In that time, her thoughts and feelings had been all over the place, causing her to fight with herself. He's not dead. But what does Oni mean? And if he was still alive, why didn't he come back? He could have told his friends he was okay at least. That *****ing jerk. That made her feel sick, and she tried to calm down her anger. He must have a good reason for doing it. I know for sure. Now that I know, though, should I tell him? Or should I wait and see if he comes forward? She slowly got to her feet and went to her closest. After Naruto died and her mind changed, Hinata took everything that had to do with Naruto and put it in the very back of her closet. She didn't want anything to bother her or remind her of the past. Now, her old life had come back. Slowly, she took out a picture of teammates Zenin and Naruto. Shino looked calm, and Kiba was smiling as he held Akamaru. Akamaru was red-faced and about to pass out, and Naruto had his arm around her. He insisted on being next to the one who saved them and kicked major ass while doing it. She gently touched the image of Naruto and herself from the past. Her eyes showed that she was shy, scared, and happy. But those eyes also showed fear and a lack of confidence. She slowly turned her head up and saw herself in a mirror. Her eyes were hard. You could see the storm of emotions going on inside, but the outside was hard and cold. She looked at the picture again. So much has happened to me since then. But was it for the best or the worst? I'm strong now, but was it worth giving up who I used to be? She again gently touched the painting. You can only find out one way. She put away the picture and got up. As soon as I can, I'm going to talk to Naruto. Namikaze Estate. In the back of the Namikaze Estate, you could hear the sound of steel hitting steel. Most people would think that Kushina and Naruto hated each other because they were fighting with swords. In truth, they were both trying to see how far they could go. Kushina moved away from a horizontal slash and answered with her own low slash. Naruto jumped over it, did a flip, and hit Kushina in the head. She blocked and spun, then slashed down, but Naruto's Vinder blocked it. Onyxia stood back and grumbled in amazement and approval as the two fought for several minutes. At last, they stopped. They grinned at each other while panting. Kushina said, "Now that's what I call a workout." As she wiped a few drops of sweat off her sword and spun it around before putting it back in its scabbard. Naruto laughed as he put his sword in its sheath on his back and drank from a bottle of water. Yeah, Aragon, you're almost as good as my sensei. That guy really knew how to fight. Kushina gave a soft smile. I wish I could have met him because he made you such a great person. Naruto laughed, and then both he and Kushina stiffened when they heard the deep ringing of the bell at the gate, which meant someone was at the gate. Naruto sighed as he made sure his face mask and hood were on. He wasn't wearing his armor, so he was just wearing his regular clothes. Before going to the gate, Kushina made sure. She opened it enough to look outside, and when she saw Jiraiya, her questioning look turned into a hard one. When Jiraiya heard the gate open, he turned around with wide eyes. He whispered, It's true. You're alive. Kushina walked out and gave him a cold look. Yeah. I am, she said. What would you like? She made an angry face and crossed her arms, making Jiraiya wince. I know this sounds crazy, but Minato came to me in a dream, beat the crap out of me, and then told me to come here. He fell to his knees and then to his hands. I'm sorry, Kushina. I've failed you, Minato, and Naruto. I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I won't ask for it, he sobbed as he stayed on his hands and knees with his head bowed. Please, though. No, I didn't mean any harm to your son. I should have taught him how to behave and raised him. I am sorry I let you and Minato down. Kushina was staring at Jiraiya and was about to say something when Naruto put his hand on her shoulder and leaned close to her ear. Mom, he said. I know you may think he just left me, but he couldn't leave Konoha, and in the end, he did start training me, he whispered. I say we give him a chance to prove himself. Kushina growled, but finally grudgingly nodded. She knelt down and said, Fine. Jiraiya, you were given the job of being Naruto's godfather. You should have cared for him first, and if you couldn't, you should have made sure he was taken in by mine and Minato's friends. You didn't do either of those things, but you did come back, and you started to train and watch over Naruto. So, I'll give you a chance, just like I'm giving Tsunade a chance. Jiraiya slowly looked up. Really? You really mean it? When Kushina nodded, he jumped up with tears running down his face. Thank you, thank you. I promise I'll do my best to earn your forgiveness. Kushina made a hand signal. She muttered, just go now. It's too soon, and turned away. Naruto looked at Jiraiya, sighed, and then went back inside with his mom. The gate locked behind them. Kushina leaned against the estate's wall and shook a little. Naruto gave her a hug. It's okay, he said in a soft whisper. She nodded and inhaled deeply. She said softly, I'm okay. It's hard. Minato and I thought we could count on a lot of people, but none of them came through for us in the end. He gave her another hug. It's okay, Mom. They're not the only ones to blame. It was the Sandaime, he said. He should have had the guts to tell everyone my real name and who I was. Then almost everyone in Konoha would have come together to help me, and I would have been safe enough to train and get stronger. She put her arm around him. She sighed softly and said, Yeah. You're right. Anyway, enough about all of this. We need to do more training. He grinned. Excellent. Let's get to it. As they went back to their training, they both laughed. 2 days after Hokage Tower. Tsunade looked up at the group gathered in front of her. I'm sending you all on a recon mission to a village where Iwa raiders have been attacking. I need you to talk to some ninjas in the area who have been fighting raiders and see if you can get them to join the village or get information from them. It's only 3 miles from our current defense line in the area, so you shouldn't have much trouble getting help or getting back to Konoha. Hinata Hyuga, Rock Lee, Kakashi Hatake, and Oni stood in front of her. Oni was in full armor, which was how most people in Konoha saw him most of the time. Please, Hokage-sama, I'm sorry, but why am I here? This seems more like a mission to watch and report, and my specialty is attacking, defending, and attacking again, the armored figure said with his arms crossed. Tsunade intertwined her fingers and put her head on the hands that were joined. Normally, you'd be right. But since they'll be close to the border, I want to have some power. You'll go with them, but you'll stay behind. You won't do anything unless you have to. Understood? Oni nodded. I see. Then I'll make sure I have plenty of things to do if I get bored. Tsunade blinked and sighed. We only have rumors about where these ninjas are, so you'll have to do some investigating. Kakashi nodded and said, yes. How can we find out who they are? No, Tsunade said, shaking her head. Sorry. Kakashi sighed and said, all right, let's get started. See you in half an hour at the west gate. The 3 ninjas and the 1 rider left, and Tsunade muttered, you arrogant little jerk, as they went. Kushina was out shopping for ingredients for her special ramen. She turned down an alley, only to turn around with her hand on the katana at her back and say, you know, I don't like having Danzo's lackeys following me. It doesn't matter, because Danzo-sama has told an agent to follow you and report on your progress. He wants to know how your quest to get the Demon Dragon Rider to help him is going. Tell him to be patient, Kushina said with a roll of the eyes. I can't just tell him what to do. The route agent didn't move. Danzo-sama told me to remind you that the fate of your daughter depends on how well you can convince him, he said, and then he was gone. Kushina grumbled as she went back home. She stopped when she saw Naruto and Onyxia getting ready to leave. Oni-san, she said. A word. She ran up to him and yelled, when are we going to deal with that jerk Danzo? She spoke quietly. Naruto let out a soft sigh. It's hard. We can't just attack him until we know for sure that Konoha's forces won't come after us. If we just attack, Konoha will strike back because they'll think we're attacking villagers. When we move, we have to do it at a time when we can get proof that Danzo is guilty. I know, Kushina took a deep breath. But because his Anbu is following him and he knows Tayuya is so close, yet so far. It's driving me insane. Don't worry, he said, putting his hand on her shoulder. He turned around and climbed into the saddle of Onyxia. I'll look into this when I get back, Kushina-san, he said as Onyxia took off. Kushina smiled and went inside. When she got to one room, she grinned softly. The walls were a soft rose pink, and it was clear that the room had just been cleaned and new furniture put in. She said this as she picked up a picture of herself, Minato, and Tayuya when she was a baby. Next to it was a picture of herself, Naruto, and Onyxia. The others were patiently waiting at the gate, except for Lee, who was jogging in place. I can't wait to start our youngest adventure. Hinata would have usually yelled or glared at Lee, but she was staring off into the middle distance and thinking about their other friend. Kakashi saw this and went over to her. Hinata, are you okay? She blinked and looked at him. I'm fine, Kakashi, she said, pulling her lower face mask up and looking at her headband. Kakashi was about to ask why when there was a loud roar and Onyxia flew over with Oni waving from her back. Kakashi nodded to the others, and they ran after him, climbing trees to keep up. Aim. Itachi paced his room restlessly before going to bed. All of his plans had started to go wrong a long time ago. He had tried to protect Sasuke from Madara by making him strong, but it brought out a dark side of Sasuke that would seek power at any cost. Now Sasuke was roaming the elemental nations, and Itachi knew of a greater threat to Sasuke that was starting to come into view. The Akatsuki's plan was put on hold when Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, was said to have died. However, the Kyuubi would come back in about 10 years. This was how all Biju worked. If their host died and took their Biju with them, the Biju would come back in a certain amount of time, which depended on how many tails it had plus 1 year for the first time it came back. Itachi looked up at the ceiling. It's been 4 years. 6 more until the Kyuubi comes back. And he is now trying to reach Sasuke, since I've grown distant from him. Surely, he'll make us fight. He knows I can't kill Sasuke, so if, or should I say when, Sasuke wins, he'll tell him it's all Konoha's fault for what happened to us. He stood up and said, I need to get to Sasuke first. Make sure he knows what really happened to our clan. With a new sense of determination, the famous Uchiha killer got up and went to send a message to his real master. Northwest Fire Country Village. Hada no, Grainfield, was one of the best places to farm in the Land of Fire because it had miles and miles of rich farmland where vegetables, fruit, and other grains could be grown. Because of this, it was a top target for enemies coming from Iwa. The village was well protected, but because all the farmland, there were several storehouses outside the city. These were harder to defend, so raiders and bandits usually went after them. 20 shinobi from Iwa were taking food from one of the storehouses, and they were laughing and joking because it was some of the easiest work they had ever done. Not too far away, a pair of red eyes watched them. The eyes narrowed as the person who owned them moved away and moved through the shadows to another shadowy figure. They're on the road, heading towards the ambush point. The other figure laughed, and the first one grinned. Are you ready? The second person gave a nod. 20 Iwa raiders went into a stretch of woods. As they walked on, not a single one of them noticed when a noose fell around the neck of the last one and pulled him up. As they went on, one of them swatted at his neck and said something about bugs. When he pulled away, he saw a dart. His vision blurred, and he swayed before he fell over. The others cursed and went on high alert. One of them took a step forward, but stepped on a tripwire. This sent a spiked log flying at the group. Most of them jumped out of the way, but 2 were too slow. Their screams echoed through the woods, and blood sprayed everywhere as they went by on the spiked log. The others snarled, "Show yourself." Someone yelled. A 15-year-old girl with blonde hair in 2 ponytails and pink eyes suddenly appeared. She was wearing a black sleeveless dress with a pink tie, black glove sleeves, black stockings, and shoes that looked like boots. She laughed and waved at them before disappearing down the road. Some of the shinobi, mostly chunins who were pretty reckless, ran after her. One of the junins noticed that the ground in front of them didn't look right and cursed, "Wait." It was too late. The chunin fell into a pit in the road, and their shocked screams were cut off abruptly. One of the other shinobi ran forward, stopped, and put his hand over his mouth. The chunin were stuck on sharpened stakes of wood and stone that were covered in mud, animal corpses, and other things too disgusting and horrible to mention. One of the chunin was struggling weakly and raised a hand, saying, "Help me. Please." He whimpered, blood pouring out of his mouth. He coughed, fell over, and his eyes were wide but empty. The junin cursed and looked up at the girl who was standing there. The girl smiled, closed her eyes, and tilted her head before disappearing into the trees. "That little bitch. I'll kill her," yells another chunin, who rushes forward, only to be thrown back by a demon windmill shuriken that almost cuts him in half. When they turned around, they heard a scream from behind them and saw a chunin holding his severed arm. His head fell off as a katana flashed between his shoulders and head. Behind the chunin was a 17-year-old boy with red hair and eyes. His pale skin was natural, and he was wearing a white coat with red trim and a light red scarf over both shoulders. He was also wearing black pants and boots. He jumped back into the trees right away as shuriken and kunai were thrown at him. One of the ninjas screamed as he was pulled back into the trees by ninja wire. His screams stopped all of a sudden. As the ninjas made a new defensive circle, they were shaking. A man's voice could be heard echoing through the woods. "You all have 2 minutes to go back to your base and leave everything you've stolen, as well as your weapons and supplies, behind. If you don't do what I say, you'll all die." Most of the remaining ninja shook, but their junin leader snarled, "I don't give a rat's ass who you think you are. We won't leave without our gear in your heads." The man's voice sighed and said, "Then get ready to die." There was only silence, then the ground shook a little and 2 roars were heard. Then, on both sides of the road, the raiders' deaths came into view. From the other side, a wind dragon with dark blue eyes roared, and from the other side, a fire dragon with red eyes roared. The Iwa ninjas were about to run away when the 2 dragons shot to the sides and started to circle the Iwa ninjas. "Shit!" yelled one of the junin as the dragon's speed increased and its parts started to come together. "Get out!" he shouted as he shushined. Another dragon did the same, but before the others could, the two dragons split up into a huge wind and flame tornado. The ninjas who were caught inside screamed in fear and pain as they were burned alive. Eventually, the fire tornado went away, leaving behind only charred bodies. Fire and wind style, firestorm whirlwind, the man said, and the two remaining ninjas shook in fear. Then there were two of them. What are you? Asked the two ninjas, shaking. Someone mumbled. The man laughed and asked, who are we? We are the Seirei no Za Shinran, and our names are Daiban and Muzai Yushi. Go back to your masters and tell them what happened here. 1. When they saw what they saw, the two ninjas ran away in fear. As soon as they were gone, the guy and girl came out. Daiban smiled. Another raiding party dealt with successfully, huh Muzai? She laughed and nodded as she pulled her demon windmill shuriken out of the chunin it was stuck in. She put it away and gave Daiban a hug, which made him smile even more. Let's get these things back to where they belong, in the warehouse. 2 hours later, the food supplies were back in the warehouse, but nobody knew who had brought them back. After 2 days, Kakashi, Hinata, and Lee went into the village of Hata. Since the village was close to the border, they thought it would be in bad shape because of the constant raids. However, most of the raids were happening on the farmlands and storehouses outside the village. Still, there was tension in the air because Iwa raiders occasionally came through town. The local militia kept them in line, but they couldn't fight them because if they did, they would bring the combined forces of the nearest Iwa outposts down on them, and they would be wiped out unless Konoha or the daimyo's own samurai helped them. Kakashi told Oni and his dragon to set up camp a few miles outside of town, in a small valley hidden between two large hills, and then start scouting in the area. The rest of them did their best to disguise themselves, in case Iwa shinobi showed up. Their main goal was to find these wandering ninjas, not fight the Iwa shinobi. Kakashi looked up from under his straw hat. He was dressed like a farmer and had a scar over his left eye. The scar and other parts of his face were covered in dirt. Lee was harder because he wouldn't wear anything that wasn't green. So, they dressed him in green peasant clothes and gave him a hunter's cloak and gear. The hood of his cloak covered his eyebrows and hairstyle, which made him harder to fool. Hinata was easier to dress up as. She had on a black, long-haired wig and purple contact lenses. She was dressed as a farmer's wife. When Kakashi walked with his head down and a cart of grain behind him, Lee carried a few dead rabbits on his shoulders, and Hinata carried a bag of vegetables. It looked like a farming family was going to the market to sell their grain and animals. Hinata had used some dirt to hide the veins that would show up when she used her Byakugan, which she was doing now. No ninjas live in the village. Kakashi nodded and said, yes. I'll work at the pub in town. You and Hinata both work at the market, Lee. They both nodded, then split up. Meanwhile, Naruto was getting close to one of the wooded areas that surrounded the village and farms. He had used hanged clones to ask around, and a few of the workers told him things. When the supplies had been returned a few times, some of the workers would go out to look for the Iwa raiders or those who had taken back the supplies. They would find signs of ambushes and battles, mostly in the wooded areas. So Naruto was in a wooded area near the warehouse that had just been robbed, and what he saw interested him. Traps had been set up all over the area, but they had been taken down. There were also signs of fighting, like a huge burn mark in the middle of the road. He went up to it and got down on his knees. Onyxia, can you hear me? Yes. What are you holding? As he stretched out in the camp, the black dragon asked. I can see marks from weapons, burns, and traps. It looks like a big ambush. Do you think I have our wandering ninjas? Onyxia said, sounds like it. Can you think of anything else? He shook his head in his mind. No, I'll look around. Naruto stood up slowly and quickly grabbed one of the long knives in his belt to block a shuriken that was being thrown at him. He turned and locked the blade of his knife with the katana that was aimed at his neck. His other knife came up fast and drove away the red-haired boy who had attacked him. Daiban was ready with his katana. Who are you? He asked, ready to fight. Naruto gave a soft growl. Who are you to attack people on the road? Don't try to be good. Burn and weapon marks wouldn't be looked at by a simple traveler. Who are you? Daiban demanded again. Naruto felt someone behind him in the trees and got ready to run. It doesn't matter who I am, he said. I'm not a shinobi, so that's all you need to know. How do I know you're telling the truth? Daiban asked. He said that he was ready to fight. Naruto smiled when he felt a familiar presence. Because Iwa doesn't have dragons, he said. Daiban looked at him strangely until he heard big wings flapping. Then, Onyxia crashed through the trees, landed, and started roaring. The demon dragon rider grinned as Onyxia stood there ready to attack. Daiban's eyes were wide, and Naruto heard a female squeak of surprise from behind him. Do you want to talk? That night at base camp. As Oni gave his report, Kakashi blinked. So. You found the ninjas we're looking for, but instead of bringing them here, you let them go. Why? Ona's armored shoulders shrugged. A sign of good faith. I asked them to meet us the next day at the same place so you could talk to them. Lee smiled. Yosh. A very young thing to do, because it will show that we have good intentions instead of making people more against us. Okay, you're right, Kakashi sighed. I'll go with you tomorrow. Hinata and Lee will stay close by in case this turns out to be a trap. They all nodded, except Hinata, who was staring into the flames of the fire they had started. Kakashi blinked. Hinata, do you understand? She looked up and said, yes. Yes. She looked back into the flames, then stood up. Oni-san. I have something to tell you. She said, I'm alone. Oni blinked, then stood up and said, of course, Hyuga-san. Hinata led him a long way from camp, and when she stopped, Oni stopped a few feet away. After a few moments, she turned back to him and said, why don't you take off your helmet? She asked with her arms crossed. Why should I? He asked, blinking behind his helmet. Because it's high time you told the truth about who you are. She said, you can't stay hidden forever. As he walked away, he sighed and said, if this is all you wanted to talk about, you wasted both of our time. Am I? Or do you not want to tell me that you're Naruto Uzumaki? Her voice made him stop and slowly turn around. You heard, she said. Naruto, it's time for you to stop lying and tell me the truth. The figure in black armor stood there and looked at Hinata before laughing. Hyuga-san, I think you've got me mixed up with someone who, last time I checked, Konoha thought was dead. How could I beat him then? Hinata gave a growl. I know it's you because I've seen your face, she said. He got stiff, and then his shoulders sagged. Slowly, he lifted his hand and undid the chin strap on his helmet. Then, he slowly lifted the helmet off his head, revealing his face. You were one of the guards outside the room when I met with the daimyo, he said as he took off his helmet. She gave him a nod while she looked into his blue eyes. Yes, I watched the meeting with my Byakugan. Naruto just stood there and grunted. So even if I talk to the leader of Fire Country, I'm still being watched? He asked, his eyes flashing. Hinata just stuck out her chin in a rude way. Since you were a mercenary and I had no reason to trust you, yes. And I was right. She said, her eyes flashing dangerously as she lost all control. She yelled, where the hell have you been? As she clenched her fists in anger. Naruto was surprised because he didn't expect Hinata to be so fierce. He knew that she had changed, but now he could see how much. She screamed, do you know what it's like to hear that one of your friends has died, to grieve for them for 4 years, and then find out that they were alive and well but didn't see any reason to come home? Naruto gave a growl. Come home to what? A whole village that hated me to the core? Being attacked by people who should have raised me. Wondering if today was the day the council finally had me banished or killed? Hinata's eyes grew smaller. Not everyone in the village is out to hurt you. Or do you not remember your friends? Naruto gave a soft snort. I remember people who said they were my friends, but half of them put me down, beat me up, or left me when it was cool to do so. The other half didn't help me because they were worried about their own problems or. He stopped, but Hinata knew what he meant. Or were shy and didn't approach you to offer friendship or help. Of course, let's not forget that the shy person you're talking about saved your life at least 3 times, she said with her arms crossed. Naruto inhaled deeply. I'll give you that. There were people I could have gone back to, but at the end of the day, I really had to ask myself if it was worth it. Hinata let out a soft growl in response. What do you mean? Why don't your friends make it worth it for you to go home? Naruto gave a head shake. You want to know the real reason I didn't come back, right? Hinata nodded. Yeah, I think I deserve it, she said with a snap. Naruto gave him a look. No, you haven't. But if it will get you off my back, then I'll tell you, he said after taking a deep breath. The first reason is that my duties and loyalty no longer stop at Konoha. Hinata blinked. What do you mean? You're a shinobi from Konoha. Why wouldn't you still be loyal? Turning around, Naruto looked up at the moon. First, I'll tell you what happened to me. As you know, I went missing during an attack by auto ninjas. What Jiraiya didn't know was that a hermit found me on the canyon floor and nursed me back to health in secret. While I was there, I found a room with a black stone in it. It turned out that the stone was an egg, and when I touched it, the being inside, my dragon Onyxia, decided I was the. He looked at her again. That changed during my training. As Aragon taught me, as I learned about the new power I had, I realized that my responsibilities couldn't be to just one village. If Konoha had my power, the council would override any decision Tsunade Ba-chan made and force me to lead Konoha in a conquest of the elemental nations. I would be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people so that Konoha could have more land, more wealth, and... Hinata's eyes got bigger, then got smaller again. So. Even if you were going to be some big world protector, you could have come back, resigned, and let us know you were alive. Naruto nodded slowly. I know. That's what brings me to reason number 2. You see, about 2 years ago, Aragon died. On that day, the Kyuubi tried to take over my body. She failed, of course. But after that, I decided it was time to open a scroll I had taken from the Forbidden Scroll of Sealing, one that had my name on it, as well as the Sandame's. Hinata's eyes got really big, and Naruto gave her a nod. There was also a letter to me in a scroll with my parents' inheritance, which I was supposed to get when I became a genin. Not only did Sarutobi not give me what was rightfully mine, but when I finally got around to opening it, I found something. At least 2 people had already opened the seal on the main scroll, and both had also tried to open the blood seal that held the keys to my family's estate and the jutsu my father left behind, including the ability to. He gave her a look. Now do you see why I didn't want to go back to Konoha? My family and I were betrayed by almost the whole village, whether they did it on purpose or not. My father, my mother, and I gave our sweat, blood, and lives for Konoha, and the village spat on all our sacrifices. No matter how much I love the village, even I have a limit. Hinata blinked. But why would Sandame betray you? It doesn't make sense, since he always seemed to care so much about you. Naruto laughed in a dark way. I've thought about that, too. He was such a nice, grandfatherly figure to me, wasn't he? But then, think about this. How is it that I was always so badly beaten in a village that always had shinobi active in it? How is it that none of them helped me until the very end? Simple. They were told not to. He looked up again. I think the Sandame did it because he thought it was for my own good in some weird way. Now that I think about it, he always seemed to be more of a politician than a shinobi leader. He did what he thought was best for Konoha, and that meant making me loyal to the village while appeasing the council, who wanted me dead either for the Kyuubi or for my family. So, he let the villagers and shinobi beat me, but saved me. She slowly nodded. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. Yes, I do, and if it's true, I really can't blame you. Naruto's head was slightly tilted. Well, what are you going to do now? Are you going to be a good Konoha shinobi and turn me in? Hinata looked at him for a few seconds and thought. Then she gave a sigh. No, I'm not. The village has really screwed you over. I won't give you any more proof that you're right. Naruto only half smiled at her. He took a step toward her and said, That's very kind of you. She felt a familiar warmth spread over her all at once, which she tried to push away. Maybe, she said, but you'd better prove you deserve it. Naruto smirked. Of course, he said, raising an eyebrow. Did I hear you right when you said you loved me? He asked. Her eyes got bigger, and she sighed. She turned around and said, Yeah, I did. So what? As Naruto looked at her, he let out a soft sigh. You know, it took Kyuubi, Onyxia, and 3 years for me to realize that. I talked to them a lot, especially about you. In fact, you, Iruka, and the Ichirakus are the only things I really missed about Konoha. She got a little red, but not too much. Naruto continued. Honestly, I'm flattered you thought of me that way. But at the same time, I realize it might be too late to try to build something with you. I'm not the only one who's changed in these years. That's why, now that you know my real name, I'd like to learn more about the new Hinata. She shifted. She asked, is that so? And what if I don't want to? He blinked because those words hurt him. That's your choice, Hinata, he said in a guarded tone. She gave a soft growl and looked up. I don't see the point of friends. I worried so much about what other people thought of me and that I would disappoint my friends and family that I barely trained. That's why I was so weak. When you died, I realized that if I wanted to be strong, I needed to focus on training and the missions. And so far, I've been proven right. I've never failed a mission, and I'm a Junin, and... You get the idea. Naruto slowly nodded. I get the idea. It's because you don't want to get hurt again by having someone close to you insult you, get hurt, or get killed. You're hiding your feelings and keeping people from getting close. Hinata's eyes got big, but Naruto told her not to say anything. I won't make you change, Hinata, but is life worth living if you don't have anyone to share it with? Before he left, he said one more thing. One last truth, he said as he put his helmet back on and walked back to camp. I think the old Hinata was strong, too. In fact, I think she was stronger than you are. Hinata just stood there and looked at the place where he had been. She had so many different feelings going through her head. Most powerful were anger, confusion, love, fear, sadness, and joy. She felt a lot of different things at once. She finally shook her head and turned around to go back to camp. Kakashi and Lee looked at her strangely, but she just looked at Naruto, who was cleaning the side of Onyxia. She felt that warmth spread over her again, but she pushed it away as she turned and went into her tent. The day after. Kakashi and Oni were back in the woods with Onyxia, where Oni had found Muzai and Daiban. Lee and Hinata were back in Hadano, watching for the Iwa shinobi. Oni had a look around. He said, they were here yesterday, and I told them to meet us here. As he looked around, Kakashi just nodded. In the end, they both looked ahead and saw Daiban come out from between the trees. The young man with the red hair nodded to them both. Oni-san. Shinobi-san, he addressed them with respect. Oni tilted his head a little, and Kakashi did the same. Kakashi Hatake, Junin of Konoha. You're Daiban Yushi, right? Where's your sister? Daiban shrugged. She was close by, and I didn't want her to get caught if things went wrong. Kakashi blinked. Nothing is going to happen. I'm just here to talk to you and take care of any enemies who might be nearby. The red-haired swordsman nodded as he sat down on a stump and told the others where they could sit. Kakashi looked around and saw that Oni was sitting on one of Onyxia's legs. Onyxia was happy. He gave a shrug and rested his arm on a tree. Daiban slowly nodded. He moved his katana to a better angle and asked, so, why does Konoha want to talk to me and my sister so much? Kakashi shook his head. Officially, we're here to find out what you know about Iwa forces in the area and to ask for your help in the war. Unofficially, we're here to help you deal with the Iwa forces in the area, or at least push them farther away from our borders. Daiban slowly nodded. We mostly get Iwa raiders here. They're not very good at fighting, but they're more aggressive and faster than normal shinobi. Since the village only has militia out here to defend them, the village doesn't bother them unless they bother the town. They have an outpost about 20 miles west on the earth side of the border. They're about 50 strong, maybe more, maybe less. Kakashi closed his eyes and gave a small smile. I get it. For now, let's take care of Iwa. Daiban nodded, but before he could say anything, the radio around Kakashi's neck started to buzz. He tried it out. Go ahead. Kakashi-san, we have a problem. Several Iwa shinobi have come into the city and are attacking businesses and people, demanding that they give them the Seirei no Za Shinran. What do we do? Kakashi cursed. Move in and intercept, but be careful. We'll be there soon. I'll send a message to the front lines asking for help. Lee cut the connection, and Kakashi quickly called up a small brown pug dog wearing a blue vest and a headband from Konoha. The dog took a look up. Yo Kakashi. What up? He asked. Kakashi sighed. No time to talk, Pakun. I need you to go to the Konoha command post in the southeast and tell them that we need help in the village of Hada number. Go. The dog, who is now called Pakun, ran away. When Kakashi turned around, Oni was already gone on his dragon, and Daiban and Muzai were running toward the village. He sighed and went after her. In the town. The village was a mess. Iwa shinobi raiders had rushed into town, which caught the people there by surprise. The militia members quickly tried to get their armor and weapons together, but they were easily overpowered. Lee was running down a village street, heading toward the screams and sounds of battle. When he turned a corner, two Iwa shinobi were trying to break down a door. He rushed forward and jumped into the air. He yelled, "Leaf Whirlwind." Both of them got hit by his spinning kick, which knocked them back. When he landed, he put one hand down and did another roundhouse kick, hitting them again when they tried to get up. Both of them went down, and Lee shot again. Three Iwa shinobi were running down one street at the same time. One of them stopped and put up a hand when he saw something move. "Wait here," he said, and went to look into it. He went down an alley, but there was nothing there. He just turned around in time to see both of his friends fall to the ground with blood coming out of their mouths. The other shinobi knew that the person in dark blue was the enemy of the Iwa forces. "The blue demon," he said in a low voice. She took out her two hook-shaped swords. Before he grabbed a long pole, his eyes grew big and he looked around wildly. He yelled, "Come on, you skank. You won't get me." She laughed in a cold way. "We'll see," she said in a whisper as she hurried him. He tried to hit her with his staff, but she pushed it away with one blade and cut him with the other. He tried to block, but it bit into the staff he was using. She pulled on him, which threw him off balance, and cut with the other blade. As he fell back, it caught his arm. She smiled as she slashed quickly and horizontally as she attacked again. He tried to block, but he wasn't ready for the second cut, which knocked the sword away. Hinata turned around, hooked the swords together at their hook points, and swung them quickly as she went around. The Iwa shinobi's throat was cut by the crescent-shaped blade above the handle of her left-hand sword. He fell backwards and held his neck as he fell to his knees. She turned and moved on, but stopped when she heard a roar and saw a black dragon flying by. "Naruto," she said in a whisper. Naruto jumped off Onyx and landed in the middle of the village. He told her, "Go crazy." She gave a grin. She roared, gladly, as she jumped at a group of Iwa shinobi. Naruto grabbed Vinder and sped away in a different direction. Two Iwa shinobi were beating a man on the ground while his broken spear lay nearby. One of them shouted, "Come on, tell us where they are," while the other kicked the militiaman. Suddenly, a voice came from behind them and said, "Gierda." The person who was kicking all of a sudden screamed as his leg broke so hard that the bone stuck out of the skin. The other person turned just in time to see a black armored figure smash into him as he fell. The two figures hit the floor. The shinobi tried to get up, but he was held down by one hand while a sword-holding armored gauntlet hit his face. The man's face was cut open by the spikes on the back of the armored fingers, and the force of the blow from the metal gauntlet and sword hilt knocked him out. Naruto stood still and watched the man get up. "Get to cover," he said as he walked away. Kakashi showed up in a street and started looking around. He put a finger to his ear. "Team, please report in. This is Lee. I'm in the southeast of the village. I've seen at least 5 enemy shinobi and I've killed them all. I'm heading north. Hinata, I've taken care of 3 enemy shinobi and am moving toward 2 more east of me, near the inns, where they've trapped a group of civilians. There are a lot of Oni in the northern part of the city. I think they attacked with only a quarter or a third of their garrison." Kakashi nodded. "Kick them out, and we'll follow them back to their base to check it out." He turned and used his own kunai to block a kunai that was aimed at him. The Iwa ninja who was holding it clenched his teeth and jerked, but his eyes widened. As Muzai slowly lowered the hand from which she had thrown several shuriken, he fell to the ground. She gave Kakashi a smile and a nod, then jumped off with Daiban. After driving the Iwa shinobi in the east to the north, Hinata moved north. She watched as 3 shinobi began setting fire to a building. She smiled and then started doing her hand signs. One of the Iwa shinobi smiled as he took a match from his pocket. "This will teach these yokels not to stand up against us again," he said as he was about to hit it. Hinata yelled, "Lightning style, divine lightning storm," as she put out both hands. All 10 of her fingers shot out lightning. 2 of the ninja were killed. The lightning went right through them without hurting them. But on the inside, things were different. Their organs were fried, and their nerves were so overworked that they couldn't handle it. Both shinobi fell to the ground as if their strings had been cut. The third shinobi got away, but Hinata was on him and was heading for his head with a chakra-tipped palm. He turned, but Hinata's palm hit him in the shoulder, destroying the bone, blood vessels, and chakra pathways there. He yelled out in pain, but a second blow broke his throat. As he fell to the ground, he gasped and choked. Lee got to the northern part just in time to see most of the Iwa shinobi gathering near the plaza south of the north gate. Kakashi joined him. "How many are there left?" "About 10, Lee said. Hinata-san is coming in from the right, and Oni-san is coming in from the left. We should be able to get them to leave, and maybe even catch one of them." Kakashi touched the radio and nodded. "Try to catch one shinobi so we can question them, and kill or drive away the rest." Oni nodded as he was the first one to reach the plaza. The Iwa shinobi began to shake right away. "It's him. It's the demon dragon rider. Back up!" yelled the leader. The shinobi moved away quickly. But a pair of kunai stuck in the legs of a female chunin in the back of the group brought her down. As she fell, she screamed out in pain. Hinata jumped on her and pushed her down in an instant. As they ran, the rest of the raiders cursed. Oni looked up quickly at Onyxia, who was flying above. "Do as they say. If you can, set fire to their base. After that, they should leave this village alone." Onyxia flew after them and let out a loud roar as she did so. Naruto turned around and went back to where the others were. The kunoichi was shaking, but he gave everyone an angry look. "WL. Get it over with," she spat. "Torture me, or kill me." Kakashi bent over. "If you tell us what we want, we might be willing to let you go." She threw up at him. She said in a whisper, "Go to hell." Hinata used a kunai to cut into her arm right away, making her scream. "Then we'll do it my way. How about I slowly take off each of your fingers until you talk?" Lee and Kakashi's eyes grew wide, but Oni pushed her away before they could do anything. "Enough. There's no need for this," he snarled. Hinata glared at him. "We need information from her, but she's not giving it to us," she said. "Plus, what I was going to do would be kind compared to what Ibiki and Anko would do to her." Naruto got down on one knee and lifted the woman's hand to show a ring on it. He dug through her pockets and pulled out her wallet, which he then looked through. He showed Hinata a photo of the woman with her 2 young children. "Do you think it would be merciful for her children to know that their mother was brutally killed instead of just being tortured and possibly set free? Just because you can kill someone doesn't mean you should." Hinata let out a growl. "Leave that enemy dead if you don't want them to hurt your friends again. A good shinobi never lets an enemy live." Oni got up and looked into her eyes. "No, a good shinobi only kills when he has to. A heartless, cold-blooded monster kills everyone. Which are you?" Her eyes got bigger as she remembered the dream she had right after Oni got to Konoha. Hearing that from Naruto while he was still alive was even scarier than seeing his dead body say it. She shook just a little bit. Oni looked at the kunoichi again. "You are an Iwa kunoichi, but you are also a mother, sister, or whatever to those kids, so you owe it to them to come back alive. Now, will you work with me?" She shook her head after a moment of shaking. "No." Oni groaned. He said softly, "Fine. Please forgive me," and put his hand over her head. He shut his eyes, which made her gasp and open her eyes wide. Her forehead was wet, and she was shaking and whimpering in pain. As the kunoichi fell asleep, Oni quickly pulled away, blinking. "I got all the information we might need from her, and I put in her head the memory that she was hurt, but we didn't help her. She'll be able to heal herself and go home." Hinata blinked as Oni dragged the Iwa kunoichi to an alley and left her there, making sure the wounds wouldn't get infected. At that moment, Muzai and Daiban fell down. Daiban asked, "What's going on?" As Muzai hugged her brother. Oni looked at them again. "Gathering information. This kunoichi will wake up thinking she was hurt but was able to hide. I took the information we might need from her mind and..." He stopped and tilted his head for a few seconds. Anixia, my dragon, just told me that she burned down the Iwa outpost. The Iwa are going back to one of their fortresses in Earth Country. Muzai laughed, and Daiban smiled. He said, that's great. Maybe we'll finally have some peace around here. Kakashi nodded. I hope so too, but for now we have to go back to Konoha. Our mission here is done, and we don't have time to waste. Daiban and Muzai, will you keep in touch and let us know if anything happens? Daiban nodded. You can be sure that if you need help in this area, we'll give it to you. Kakashi nodded. Okay, Oni-san. Since you're the fastest, go back to Konoha and report in. We'll be back as soon as we can. Anixia soon came back, and all Oni did was give a simple nod of acknowledgement. He climbed up on her back and turned to look at Daiban and Muzai. Be careful, you two, and let's go. Anixia let out a roar as she flew through the air. Inside, Kyuubi giggled. She laughed as Naruto sweated and said, let's ride? You're such a dork. Can it fuzzball? He said something in his mind, which made Kyuubi laugh. Konoha, one day later. Tsunade looked at what was in front of her. She looked up at Oni and asked, is this right? Oni, who was now wearing a dark outfit with a hood and a mask over his face, nodded. Yes, it is. She told me herself. Iwa has plans for a huge offensive. It goes right along our southernmost point in the defensive line before sweeping around to the west to attack Suna. By coming from that direction, they'll be able to strike far into the land of winds before they hit desert. Suna's forces aren't ready to defend their eastern flank, and Iwa could do a lot of damage by the time they get around to driving them out. Tsunade gave a sigh. The problem is that we can't move our troops away from our defensive line or Suna's, or Iwa will figure out that we know what we're doing. Oni gave his chin a scratch. Then we'll have to slow them down as much as possible so that when they break through, we have time to move and fight them. Probably guerrilla attacks by small groups and traps set in front of them. While that's going on, Suna can move a lot of their forces east, and Iwa's forces will be destroyed before they can get where they're going. Tsunade nodded. I'll talk about it at the next council meeting. Thanks for the information, Oni-san. You may leave. Oni nodded, then jumped out the window and bounced back to the Namikaze estate by bouncing off roofs. Inside his house, Naruto took off his mask and let out a soft sigh. He went inside, where Kushina was waiting for him. Naruto, while you were gone, another root agent came. Danzo is getting restless. Soon, he won't wait for me anymore and will go after you. Naruto nodded. I know. My clones have been following his agents, so I know of several exits. But the information I got from that root agent's mind is not enough. Give me a few hours, Mom, and then we'll make plans. As Naruto walked past her and into the indoor training dojo, Kushina gave him a nod. He closed his eyes and sat down. Hang on, sis. We'll be there soon to get you. Danzo gave a soft growl as he read the report in front of him. So, our plans to steal the papers about the sale of Kushina didn't work out? The root shinobi in front of him gave a nod. Yes, Danzo-sama. As you told him, our agent didn't wear anything that would link him to a ninja. The Tsuchikage thinks it was just a Ronin shinobi. When he was caught, he set off the explosive tags on his body, making sure that nothing could be learned from him or his body. Danzo stood. Did anything good come from this? The agent gave another nod. Yes. The Tsuchikage and his advisors thought that our agent's death was an attempt on the Tsuchikage's life. Because of this, some of Iwa's most elite forces have been pulled back, and a lot of their operations have been cancelled. In other words, we've stopped Iwa's big plans. Danzo simply let out a sigh. Good. Then we've helped Konoha, even if it's just for a short time. Still, it would have been better if the documents had been kept safe. Have all the root shinobi stationed in the base stay alert. I fear we may have to fight soon. The agent nodded and walked away, and Danzo started to think in silence. As the agent walked away from Danzu's room, he didn't know that he could still feel the presence. Danzu's facility was filled with the same presence that had gotten into the minds of many root agents. Back at the Namikaze estate, Naruto closed his eyes. By doing this, he was able to spread his mind out and enter the minds of others. But he couldn't affect them as much as he could when he was in the mind of just one person. He was using his mind to map out where the root headquarters were. By going into different consciousnesses like he was doing now, he was able to see the base from different points of view. He sighed and opened his eyes after a while. He quickly got a piece of paper and started drawing. He softly talked to himself as Kyubi and Anixia helped him remember things he had forgotten. He finally left the dojo and went back to the backyard, where his mom was sharpening her katana. As he held up the rolled-up piece of paper, she looked up. "It's all done." She said, "Yes," and quickly followed him inside, where no one could see or hear them. Naruto spread out the map on the scroll. "I made a map of Danzu's lair. From what I could tell, it's at least 10 to 20 stories high and is buried under Konoha. Actually, that's only partially true. A good number of the entrances are in Konoha. The complex itself is about 2 miles south of town. It centers around this massive open cylinder here, which is the hub. On the floor above that are the experimental labs, torture and interrogation rooms, prison cells, and the offices of the top root members, including dear old Danzu's office." Naruto took out a pencil and drew a circle around one area. "From what I can tell, this is where they're keeping Tayuya. It's a special prison for people they want in the best shape. It's also the most impenetrable cell ever made, almost impossible to escape from." Kushina slowly nodded. "Okay, so what's the plan? Can we sneak into one of the entrances to Konoha?" Naruto gave a head shake. "No. Each entrance has seals that scan a person's chakra, so transformation is out. They also detect changes in chakra, so even a Yamanaka couldn't get in with their jutsus. Aburame insects are also out, because the seals scan everything that comes in, and if your blood or chakra isn't in one of the seals, you die. So there's no way to get in." Kushina gave a nod. "There has to be some way in." Naruto chuckled. "Yes, there is, but the problem is that the only way to get in is to fight." Kushina's eyes got bigger when Naruto told her about his plan. Then her face broke into a smile. "I like it." Naruto smirked. He rolled up the map. "I thought you would. I just need to find the right place, and then we can move on. It's time to take the route down." On that night, outside of Konoha, Naruto, dressed in his normal clothes, crept through the trees toward where Danzu's root headquarters were thought to be. He smiled when he saw that his target area was actually a big open space. Naruto got on his knees, put his hand on the ground, and closed his eyes. "Here is the place. I sen feel it. This is where the ground is the thinnest. It shouldn't be hard." He stood up slowly and put out his hands. Deloy Resa, Earthrise. The area's ground started to rise, and Naruto moved his hands again, making the ground shift to one side. Naruto found concrete where it had been. He made a smirking face, took out a few high-yield explosive tags, and put them on important spots in the open area. He gave each person a certain amount of chakra, which would slowly drain over time. When the chakra ran out, the tags would catch fire and blow up. When Naruto was done with his job, he moved the earth back over it. As he turned to leave, he smiled. He was going from tree to tree when he heard something and stopped. He turned and went in the direction of the sound. He stopped in the trees near a clearing and closed his eyes. He grinned as he looked at the kunoichi in the field in front of him.
Hinata gasped and held on to her swords.
Around her were the fake people she had brought along. Most of them had cuts all over their bodies, and some had body parts cut off or were cut in half. She lifted her swords slowly as she looked at the last puppet. She swung her swords quickly. The blade of one sword cut deep into the dummy's neck, and the blade of the other, which was shaped like a crescent moon, came up and cut the dummy's stomach open. She took a step back and watched the dummy topple over. She took a deep breath, then tightened her muscles and turned her head a little. She asked over her shoulder, "How long were you there?" Naruto landed on the ground in silence. "About 5 minutes. That's long enough to see you land the final blow." She sighed as she put the swords in their sheaths on her back and started cleaning up the dummies by putting them in a storage scroll. "Why are you all the way out here? Are you now following me?" Naruto chuckled. "No, I'm out here for a very important reason." "What about you?" She chewed on it. "I'm bored, and you're to blame." His eyes got bigger. "What did I do?" She turned toward him. "It was those damn words you said. I can't get them out of my head. I'm so confused." First, I'm not strong enough to be recognized by my clan or most of the village. Then you die, and I become a Junin, and everyone recognizes my strength. But instead of being happy and accepting me, most people seem sad or scared. And then you tell me you thought the old me was stronger than the new me. I'm just so confused. Naruto blinked. He shut his eyes and thought about what she had said. I think I know what's wrong with you, Hinata. It's that you're not whole. Hinata looked at him like she didn't understand, so he went into more detail. Before I left on my training trip, before I died, you were a very kind and caring person. Your personality did not match that of a shinobi, who is supposed to kill for their village, but you still had something powerful, compassion. Then I died. And you became pretty much the ideal shinobi, cold, ruthless, and deadly. But in the process, you lost what really made you. You. And for a while, it. You see, Hinata, you are a shinobi of the village. That means you have to be able to fight enemies and kill them if you have to. But shinobi are not just killing machines. A shinobi is also a person, with all the emotions that come with that. A shinobi without their emotions might as well be a kunai. A weapon to be used, and thrown away when they are no longer useful. Hinata was looking down. But. I don't get it, Naruto. Why do I need these feelings if I got so strong without them? It doesn't make sense. Naruto gave her a look. Tell me, Hinata, what happens when you see your sister? Do your teammates still joke around you and ask you to do fun, meaningless things with them? Do you take time to just look up at the stars at night? Hinata just sat there and thought. When she last saw Hanabi, her sister backed away from her with fear in her eyes. Her teammates never talked to her about anything other than missions. Naruto looked at her sword slowly. I've heard that these swords used to belong to your mother. Did she use them like you do, or did she use them to protect others and only kill when there was no other way? Hinata stopped and slowly looked at him. She whispered, "Don't dare bring my mother into this," and her eyes hardened. Naruto knew he'd hit a nerve, but he kept going. Do you think your mom would be proud to know that her daughter has become a killer, not just a shinobi but a destroyer of lives? Hinata put up her hand to slap him, but her hand started shaking, so she stopped. She started shaking and her eyes started to fill with tears. Her hand finally fell, and she started to cry quietly. Naruto sighed and put his hand on her shoulder slowly. Hinata, being able to kill an enemy doesn't make you strong. I have killed, and sometimes, I'm happy when I do. But only when I know the enemy I'm killing was a truly horrible person, who ruined lives. When I fight others, when I fight people who are just doing their job, I don't take pleasure in killing. I mourn the loss of life. That's what makes a person strong, Hinata. That's the real strength of a. She cried for a few minutes while Naruto did nothing but sit there. At some point, she stopped crying, and she wiped away her tears. She looked up at him slowly. She whispered. What do I do? Naruto got up with a soft sigh. I can't tell you what to do, Hinata. All I can say is that you need to find a balance between your shinobi side and your human side. It's up to you to figure out how to do that. He turned to leave, but stopped. But here's some advice. Start with your family and work outward. I'm sure your cousin and sister would love to have some of the old Hinata back more than anyone. After that, he went away. Hinata stood still and watched, then turned and looked back up at the sky. She couldn't help but be amazed by the thousands of stars in the clear night sky. She said in a soft voice, "Balance, huh?" The next morning, early. As Danzo got out of bed, he sighed. He couldn't get a good night's sleep because he had nightmares all night. In all of them, the demon dragon rider tried to catch him. No matter what he did, that black armored figure followed him. He shook his head as he grabbed his cane and started getting ready for the day. In the Hokage's office, Tsunade slowly stretched and got off the couch. She fell asleep there because she wanted to start her work early. He smiled as he looked out the window. It's a lovely day. I hope nothing ruins it. Naruto finished putting on the last piece of his armor at the Namikaze estate. He got up and put his shield on his back. He looked at his mother, who was coming out of her room. Instead of her usual red sweater-like top and black shorts, she wore ambu-style clothes, which included a reinforced armored vest and leather pauldrons, bracers, and shin guards that were flexible but still strong. As Zetsume, she wore a hunter nin mask, which she clipped to her side as she pulled her hair back into a tight ponytail. Naruto gave her a nod as she put on the mask. "Ready?" She nodded. "Ready." As he led them out back, he said, "Then it's time." Onyxia was very excited to see them. The Root Shinobi were going about their normal business at the Root headquarters. Aside from what had to be said, there wasn't much talk. Only the newest recruits, who weren't yet emotionless robots, were talking to each other in a very animated way. No one knew about the explosive tags that were slowly losing their chakra. Chakra that was stopping each fuse from going off. Above, Onyxia flew over Konoha's walls, making the guards blink. One person asked, "What are they doing?" "You should tell Hokage-sama," someone else said before quickly leaving. Naruto smiled as they landed a safe distance from the clearing, where he had planted the tags. About half an hour more. "Get ready, Mom." She held the handle of her katana and gave a nod. Tsunade blinked, and one of the guards at the wall came into view. "What's that?" "Hokage-sama, I came to tell you that the Demon Dragon Rider and Kushina Namikaze left Konoha with the Black Dragon." "They went over the south wall," I said. The guard stood at attention, waiting for her orders. Tsunade turned and looked out the office window. "What exactly are they doing?" Danzo limped slowly into his office and took a seat behind his desk. Right away, a Root Shinobi showed up. "Danzo-sama, we've lost touch with the Root agent who was supposed to watch Kushina and the Demon Dragon Rider." Danzo tensed. "Alert all Shinobi and get ready to defend the base." As soon as the Shinobi left, Danzo grabbed his cane and started to limp to the prison cells. "Damn you, Kushina. You didn't want to play by my rules, so your daughter is going to die." As soon as he walked out of his office, he knew something was wrong. He looked up at the center hub's ceiling. His eyes blinked as he felt a small spark of chakra. Then the ceiling blew up in a series of explosions. The sentries on the walls of Konoha were shocked when smoke and flames suddenly appeared not too far from the village. "Tell the Hokage and shut down the village." Onyxia seemed to smile from above the explosion. "We blew the roof off. Now it's time to bring the root down," Naruto said as Onyxia dove. As debris fell from the ceiling, the Root Shinobi scattered and crashed into the walkways that went from wall to wall in the center hub. Danzo was knocked off his feet by the explosion because it happened so close to him. As he struggled to get up, he watched with wide eyes as the smoke from the explosion shot forward and then parted to reveal the Demon Dragon Rider's Black Dragon. Onyxia let out a loud roar as she spread her wings and shot flames straight down. Her flames were so hot that they tore through the walkways and burned both concrete and people. Near one of the mid-level entrances, Onyxia slowed her fall. Kushina and Naruto both jumped from that place. Onyxia gave them a nod and flapped away, leaving the Root headquarters, which was now damaged. In the tight middle area, it would be easy for her to get stuck. Naruto turned to look at his mom. "Find Tayuya, and I'll keep them busy." Kushina nodded and went down one of the hallways. Naruto took out Vinder and his shield. When he turned around, he saw the Root Shinobi start to get back together. Most people were trying to figure out what was going on, but some saw the Oni. They went right after him to attack him. Naruto grinned. 10 shadow clones appeared around him. He said, "Guess I won't have to hide what I can do anymore." Everyone ran forward, ready to fight. The two sides fought, and as more Root Shinobi saw the fight, they came to help. Naruto spun around, and Vinder cut through the arm of one Shinobi. Then, he used his shield to knock the Shinobi away. He watched as 2 more of them attacked him with a mix of fire and wind. He jumped over the attack and shot kunai at both of them. They jumped back, but a clone cut them open. Naruto made a smirk, but it fell apart as more Root Shinobi came up from below. He felt bad because he could tell they were either victims of brainwashing or young people who didn't know any better. He shut his eyes and gave 2 of his clones a nod. They both jumped down to try to knock them out. Danzo, meanwhile, had stumbled to the edge of the hallway that led from his office to the main hub. There was still a bit of walkway in front of him, but it was full of burning things. Light came in from above through a hole. Behind him, a pale, girly-looking boy got off the plane. He was wearing a very short shirt with one long sleeve and one short sleeve. He was also wearing pants, fingerless gloves, and a tanto was strapped to his back. The Root Shinobi said, "Danzo-sama, the Demon Dragon Rider is attacking our Shinobi on the lower levels." He also seems to be using clone jutsu, maybe shadow clones. Danzo got a little stiffer. Shadow clones? That's a technique from Konoha. How could he have learned it? Maybe Kushina let him study in the Yondaime's libraries. It doesn't matter. I want him caught now. Sai nodded. I should also tell you that Kushina-san is here. No one knows where she is. Danzo took a look behind him. Get a group together, find her, and keep her. Sai nodded before he left. Danzo looked at the fight going on below him. Fu, Torun, he said. Behind him, two of his root agents in cloaks came out. We'll deal with this newcomer. As another root agent slid off her blade, Kushina smiled. I told you not to get in the way of me and my daughter. She ran on, searching every cell she found until she came to a very heavy door guarded by two masked shinobi. They both pulled out their tantos and charged, with Kushina holding on to her katana. After a quick flash of light and two spurts of blood, Kushina was already out of sight. She flicked the blood off her blade and put it back in its sheath with a flourish as the two shinobi slowly slid apart, sending blood everywhere. Kushina took one of their sets of keys and tried to open the door. She was able to open the door at last. She almost kicked the door open and walked in. Her eyes widened. Under a blanket, a figure was huddled on a cot. The pillow the figure's head was on was covered with red hair. They didn't do anything but breathe steadily and a little shallowly as they lay on the cot. Kushina ran over to the figure and gave them a gentle shake. Tayuya. Tayuya, please answer me. Tayuya moved slowly, and when her head moved up, her eyes were a bit cloudy. Who are you? Behind her mask, Kushina's eyes were wet, and she shook her head. Don't worry, I'm here to get you out of here, she told Tayuya as she slowly picked her up and wrapped the blanket around her. She turned, but then she stopped. Sai said, with three root shinobi behind him, I'm afraid you can't leave, Kushina-san. Danzo-sama has ordered your capture. Kushina growled. She said, you don't want to mess with me, not now or ever. As a clone came out from behind her and took Tayuya. As Kushina turned, the three root shinobi charged. 10 root shinobi were all around two clones of Naruto. They gave each other smirks. Who's first to 5? The other person said, you're on. Both of them ran into the group. Another one laughed as he saw his wind jutsu blow some root shinobi all over the place. In particular, it spread their body parts all over. As a young shinobi came at him, he turned around. The clone sighed as he disappeared, knocking out the young ninja. The root shinobi were being killed off one by one. Even though they almost always trained, they didn't get the physical improvements that Oni did because he bonded with Onyxia. They also didn't have the ability to get into other people's minds and shut them down that way. The real Naruto watched from the shadows and grinned. One of his clones was fighting a shinobi who was pretty good with a kusarigama. The clone put up his hand and waved him over. The root shinobi charged by swinging quickly with the chain's heavy end. The Naruto clone tried to duck under it, but the chain grabbed his leg and threw him off balance when it came back around. The root shinobi smiled, but his eyes grew wide when the armored figure he was fighting grabbed the chain and pulled him toward him. With a yell, one of the clone's sabinots pulled him forward and onto its claws. His eyes got bigger, and then he pooped on a rock. The clone's eyes got bigger, and then the chain sent out a lot of volts, which got rid of him. The root shinobi pulled back on his chain and saw another armored figure almost appear in front of him. He was knocked out and his face was cut open when a clawed fist hit him in the face. Naruto jumped back when a kunai landed right where he was standing. He looked up and saw Danzo and the two cloaked figures standing on a broken walkway above him. Danzo, holding his cane, said, so. We're finally meeting, Oni, and neither the council nor the Hokage can stop us. Naruto laughed in a demonic way. As he charged forward, he said, yes, there's nothing stopping me from making you pay for what you've done. The two people in cloaks moved to stop him. One of them ripped the glove off his right hand as the skin on it started to turn black. Naruto's eyes got big, and he flipped over the other guy to block his sword attack. He didn't land near Danzo because there were two people between him and his target. Hero is a song by Skillet. Naruto gripped his sword, smirking. What's wrong, Danzo? Are you too scared to face me yourself, or are you so weak that your minions have to fight for you? The two cloaked people took a step forward, but Danzo's raised hand stopped them. Don't insult him back. I'll show him how wrong he is. Danzo slowly took off the big sling that was around his right arm. This showed that his forearm was covered with big metal seals. Slowly, he started to take them off, but had to jump back when Naruto's sword hit where he was standing. The armored figure spun away as the shinobi with the sword cut at him. You really think I'll give you time to reveal whatever you're about to reveal? Naruto let out a soft growl. You two were getting on my nerves, he said as the other figure reached out his hand. The darkness seemed to leave him and move in a dark cloud toward Naruto. Naruto put his hand out. I don't think so. Brisengr. Black flames shot out and engulfed the cloud. They kept going toward the person, who tried to get away. He only partly succeeded, because his right hand was badly burned. Naruto tried to go back to Danzo, but the person with the sword caught him off guard. When the blade hit his pauldron, it made a long scratch. Naruto turned around and threw him backwards into a rock. The shinobi was surprised and grunted as he hit, but his eyes grew wide as he suddenly felt pain. Naruto flicked his sword clean of blood as his right hand slowly moved away from his wrist. Stay down, and you'll live longer. As soon as he turned around, the other person grabbed him. He suddenly felt something touching his left arm through the smallest holes in his chainmail. He dropped his shield as his left arm shook and groaned in pain. The figure in the cloak said, "My microscopic bugs are very poisonous. You won't be able to move for about 20 seconds. An Aburame, huh? Too bad for you. Your bugs went into the wrong person," he growled as the light in his eyes got brighter. He let out a roar, and a red aura erupted around him. The cloaked Aburame was thrown away. He ran forward as soon as his arm stopped shaking. The Aburame had just started to stand up when Naruto's left hand wrapped around his neck and burned it. He was shoved backwards by the armored man, right onto a twisted metal support beam. As the Aburame struggled on the beam like a butterfly stuck to a wall, Naruto moved away. Stay here, he told Danzo, who had just taken off all the metal seals. Danzo's eyes grew smaller. I've felt that chakra, that demonic taint, before. Naruto grinned under his helmet. Well, after today, you won't feel it again. You're done. Naruto grabbed his sword and charged. Before he looked up at Naruto, Danzo slowly took off the bandages from his right arm. Naruto stopped and shook a little because of what he saw. Danzo's arm was covered with eyes, and all of them were looking at him. Danzo held out his hand slowly. What gives, demon? Are you scared of a few Sharingans? Naruto was shaking. You. So it wasn't enough that the Uchiha clan was killed? Now you desecrate them. For your own power? Danzo just looked at him with no emotion. You're a fool. Power is all that matters, and that's what I want. I want the power to protect and rule over Konoha, a village whose morals have become weak because of people like that pathetic Will of Fire. The village can't have peace by being good, fair, and friendly with others. Not in this world. That's why I want your power under my control, so that Konoha will be safe. Naruto let out a growl as the aura around him grew stronger. You're wrong. You have no idea. How wrong you are. With a roar, he suddenly appeared in front of Danzo and gutted him. Danzo's eye got bigger as he spat out blood, and then all of a sudden, he was gone. The leader of Root had just finished a series of hand signs when Naruto turned his armored head. He sucked in air and sent out spear-shaped blasts of wind. Naruto turned around and crossed his arms in front of himself. He was pushed back by the wind, which scratched and dented his armor. When it was over, he let out a growl. He raised his hands and said, "My turn." The rocks around them both rose up, and then they all shot straight at Danzo. The Warhawk was broken more than once. Naruto softly breathed out, then his eyes got bigger, and he spun around to block a choke attack that was coming at his neck. Danzo made a soft grunt, and Naruto let out a growl. What do you need to die? Danzo gave it a little more effort. You can't do it. You can't beat me. Naruto snarled until he heard Kyuubi's voice. Naruto, take a look at his arm. When Naruto looked, his eyes got bigger. Two of the eyes on Danzo's arm that were Sharingan had shut. Naruto turned around to look at Danzo. It's those Sharingan eyes. They must be stopping my attacks in some way, don't they? Danzo's good eye got bigger, and then he gave the tiniest grin. You're right. This is a Uchiha Dujutsu technique. Since you can't win, I'll tell you the truth. This technique is called Izanagi. For a brief moment, I can control everything. I can bend space and time to make sure that any injury, or even death, is no more than a dream. Naruto gave a growl. If that's the case, well, I guess I'll have to break your dream, he said as he kicked Danzo away. Danzo stood there, panting a little. Not as easy as it sounds. How can I beat him if he's using something that makes it impossible for me to kill him? He can't use it forever because every time he has used it so far, one of those eyes has closed. I can't do this forever, though. He'll catch me off guard at some point. Wait. Does it only stop attacks that are physical? There, Danzo stood. I'll give you one chance. Surrender to me. If you don't, I'm afraid you won't like seeing me hurt your friend and Tayuya. Naruto tensed up and let out a growl. Don't you ever, he said as he slowly took off his helmet. When he dropped it, Danzo's eyes widened in surprise. Ever threaten my family again? Naruto yelled as Kyuubi's chakra surrounded him. Near the explosion, Tsunade and Hinata were among the many shinobi from Konoha who had gathered on the surface. Everyone was startled by the blast of power that went outward. Danzo spit up blood as Naruto's clawed gauntlet tore into his stomach, spilling blood and organs on the floor. He ran away, but he had to duck under a roundhouse kick that went the other way. Naruto landed and swung one of the 3 chakra tails behind him at Danzo, sending him flying into a wall. Then he ran after him. Danzo got scared and ran away, but Naruto turned around and grabbed him when he came back from behind. As their eyes met, he yelled, "This is your end." Danzo found himself in a black void all of a sudden. He looked around for a moment before being thrown against a wall and having chains put around his arms. Genjutsu? It doesn't matter. I'll use Izanagi and run away. There's no point. Danzo tried to use his jutsu, but it didn't work. So, my theory was right. You can't use Izanagi to escape a mind probe or mental attack while your consciousness is trapped here, Naruto said, still in his armor. Danzo fought, and his one eye was wide open. What do you mean? Izanagi should be able to handle any jutsu, even Yamanaka's. Naruto chuckled. This isn't a jutsu, you jerk. This is me using my new powers to rip into your mind and take control. It's much harder to do it on you than on those root agents of yours, though, because your mental willpower is so strong, especially when backed by those Sharingan eyes. I'm having to put all my concentration into this. Outside, the root shinobi who was wearing a cloak and whose sword hand Naruto had cut off stumbled toward where Danzo and Naruto were standing. He had a kunai in his good hand and was getting ready to stab Naruto when the dead body of Sai hit him and knocked him down. Tayuya was on Kushina's back when she showed up. She told the root agent, "Let the kids play," and then she kicked him in the face. As Naruto turned, he smiled. Well, I think it's time to stop. I was going to kill you for threatening my sister and mom, especially since you sold my mom into slavery. But since you did all of this to get to me, I'm flattered. So I'll let you live. That way, you can enjoy my mom and sister's company. But first, I think I'll shut down that trick of yours. Danzo's eyes got bigger, just like in the real world. When he stopped moving, Vinder was drawn away from Naruto. He tried to get back in charge, but the sword slipped. Then he stood up and cut off his own arm. Danzo yelled out in pain as Naruto smiled. Well, that takes care of that. Kami, do you know how good this feels? I've spent so long planning this, waiting for the chance to pay you back for what you did to me and my mom. And now, I'm finally free of you, free of the constant weight and shadow you cast over me. I hope you enjoy your eternity in hell, Danzo. Because that's where you're going. Naruto stopped looking inside Danzo's mind. Danzo screamed in pain and anger, but Kushina's right hook knocked him out and stopped him from talking. The two of them stood there, surrounded by debris and the bodies of root shinobi who were either dead or unable to move. They both smiled at each other, but their smiles disappeared when dozens of Anbu from Konoha fell down all around them. Tsunade soon caught up, but she stopped when she saw what was going on. She whispered, "WH. What? Naruto?" Naruto laughed softly and gave Tsunade a toned-down version of his famous foxy grin. Hey Ba-chan, it's been a while. Tsunade just stood there, stunned. She saw Naruto in front of her. Naruto was the boy who gave her a new life and made it worth living again. The boy who died on Jiraiya's training trip. He wasn't dead, though. He was standing there in the Demon Dragon Rider's armor. He held the black sword with runes on it, which was now covered in Danzo's blood, in one hand. His helmet had been picked up by the other hand. The Anbu who were with her were also shocked. Here, in front of them, was the man who had destroyed one of Iwa's most important border posts and forced Kumo to leave the war on his own. When they found out that the man who did all of that was the blonde knucklehead who had been last in the academy, they were completely shocked. Naruto moved a little, and Kushina pulled Tayuya closer. The flute player with red hair just laid in Kushina's arms, unconscious because Danzo's shinobi had given her sedatives. There was silence for a few seconds until Naruto finally spoke up. "So, Ba-chan? Are you going to say something?" he asked nervously. Tsunade drooled when he heard that name. It was just what he did. She yelled, "You annoying brat!" and ran at him. Naruto tensed up, but when Tsunade hugged him, he found himself wrapped in a hug. Kushina breathed a sigh of relief, and Naruto's eyes widened in shock. Tsunade held him tight and cried. "You stupid brat. You died. You stupid annoying kid," she whimpered. As Naruto hugged her back, he could feel his eyes getting warmer. He said softly, "Sorry, Ba-chan. I'm sorry I hurt you." The Anbu hung back awkwardly because they didn't know what to do. When Jiraiya landed near them, their problem was solved. He didn't understand why Tsunade was hugging the black armored figure and asked, "Tsunade, what's going on?" When he saw Naruto's face, his eyes got really big. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya, who had his eyes wide open and was just staring at Naruto. She looked at her Anbu, then at Kushina and Naruto. She said in a whisper, "Maybe we should go somewhere more private to talk about this." After 30 minutes, Tsunade's office. Naruto walked into the Hokage's office and stood in front of Tsunade and Jiraiya. Tayuya was taken to the hospital by Kushina, who also carried a stasis scroll with Danzo in it. Tsunade had finally gotten over being surprised and happy to see Naruto alive, and now he could see that she was almost too angry to speak. "Naruto, I'm glad to see you, but I'm also. I don't think angry is the right word, but that's what I am. I'm angry that you've been gone for 4 years without letting me know you were still alive. Could you tell me why you're still alive but haven't told Konoha you're okay?" Naruto inhaled deeply. "Okay. But it's a long story." So, he told them. He told them how Aragon found him and took care of him until he was well again. How he found the dragon eggs and how Onyxia helped him hatch them. He said that he had stayed in Konoha to train and get stronger for Konoha, but that his goal had changed as he learned more about his power. When he talked about Aragon's death and Kyuubi's attempt to take over, his face got sad. He told her with anger how he had found out about his father, mother, and Sarutobi's betrayal. Both of them were shocked to hear this, but they didn't ask any questions right away. He then told them about his work as a mercenary, how he came to attack Ru-Take, and how he found his mom. He told them about their trip to find out how Kushina had been captured and sold into slavery. He brought out papers that were taken from a dead Iwa slaver and copies of papers from the Tsuchikage's office. They showed that the deal was made between the Tsuchikage and one of Danzo's most trusted shinobi. After that, he talked about what he and his mother were trying to do before Konoha hired him. When he was done, Tsunade and Jiraiya just sat there and didn't say anything. Naruto let out a sigh and looked to the side. "I know I should have sent a message saying I was okay, but if I did, you would have sent me home. And if Konoha was in a position where they could use me and my powers freely, I just couldn't live with the idea of being used to conquer when my powers are meant to keep the balance." Tsunade slowly nodded. "I get it, Naruto, and after the way you've been treated, I don't blame you," she said with a sad smile. Naruto gave Jiraiya a soft smile and then looked at her, who was just staring at him. Before he could say anything, Jiraiya gave him a tight hug. "Don't ever dare to do something like this again, do you hear me? I can't lose you again, Naruto. I can't." Naruto gave a soft smile. "It's okay, pervy sage. Just promise to do a better job of raising me." Jiraiya smiled. "I will, I swear." Naruto nodded softly. Before anyone could say anything, one of the Anbu who had been at the root headquarters ruins showed up. "Hokage-sama, the council has come together. They want to know what happened with the explosions, smoke, and fire outside of Konoha." Tsunade gave a sigh. "Naruto. For now, it might be best to keep your name a secret." Naruto looked at her and then gave her a smile. He put his helmet on and said, maybe. Or maybe it's time for a change in Konoha. Tsunade blinked, before grinning. You have no idea how much I've missed doing that. The three of them went to the council room quickly. As soon as they walked in, everyone looked in their direction. Everyone was surprised to see the armored black figure with them. Homura spoke up as the council's spokesman. Tsunade, what happened? We've only heard rumors and reports about what caused the explosion outside the wall. Tsunade walked over to her chair and sat down in it. I didn't know what caused the explosion until recently. To be exact, it was him, she said, pointing to Oni. As he stood there, everyone looked at him. It's easy to understand. I was breaking into the secret headquarters of the Anbu group called Root. Everyone blinked, before Kaharu stood. You must be wrong. After the end of the Third Shinobi War, Root broke up. Jiraiya stepped in at this time. I'm afraid we were tricked. Root was still active, but as a separate group from Konoha's military. They only answered to Danzo, as these documents show. He put a few papers on the table in front of the council. Shibi took over as the two elders looked at the papers. Where is Danzo right now? The Demon Dragon Rider's helmet turned toward him. Right now, Kushina Namikaze has him locked in a stasis scroll. Some of the civilians stood up right away. One person yelled, what right does she have to hold him? He should be brought here to defend himself. Oni looked at him. She is holding him because both she and I have business with him, and we won't let him twist the charges that will be brought against him. We have waited too long for justice against him, he growled, his eyes flashing. Hiashi blinked. What do you mean? Oni looked at him, then pulled a scroll out of his bag and opened it. He put a ledger and a few other papers on the table in front of Tsunade. I'm talking about these, Hiashi-san. 18 years ago, Danzo kidnapped Kushina Namikaze and sold her to the Tsuchikage, who gave her to an Iwa slaver, who sold her to at least 7 different owners. He also helped Orochimaru kidnap Kushina and Minato Namikaze's daughter, Tayuya Namikaze. The last part made everyone blink. Everyone knew about the Namikaze's first child, but it wasn't as important as Naruto's birth or the Kyuubi attack. A lot of people had just put it out of their minds. One of the civilians looked at Oni as the papers were passed around. Well, I can see why Kushina Namikaze would want to get back at Danzo, but what about you? What did he do to you? Oni looked at him, then at Tsunade, who was about to say something. Wait, Hokage-sama. I have something to say to him. Tsunade blinked twice and then sat down. I get it, but before you do, I want to make sure you know a few things. What I'm about to tell you is an S-rank secret, and you can't tell anyone else about it without my or Ona's permission. Do you understand? Everyone blinked and nodded. Oni nodded and reached up to take off his helmet's chin strap. Danzo is pretty much to blame for the start of my terrible life, he said simply. Many of you helped make it even worse, but he was the start of it all. Everyone blinked. Oni. I'm afraid you have us mixed up. What did we do to you? Shibi asked, sounding really confused. Oni just held on to his helmet. He said, let me show you, and then he took off his helmet. Everyone in the room gasped in shock, and Naruto gave them a sly grin. Do you all get it now? Before Homura went up to Tsunade, they sat there in complete silence. You knew this? You knew that he was the Dragon Rider? Tsunade looked at him in a serious way. She reminded him of his place by saying, I don't like the way you sound, advisor. People were surprised to hear the steel in her voice, since she had been pretty quiet at council meetings for the past 4 years. As soon as Naruto spoke, Homura moved back. Tsunade-sama didn't know it was me until today. She, Jiraiya, and a dozen Anbu came after I beat Danzo in a one-on-one fight. I also have more evidence against Danzo, he said as he took out another scroll, unrolled it, and took out Danzo's severed right arm and a Sharingan eye. When Naruto held up both items, everyone gasped in disgust. This is Danzo's right arm, the one he kept in a sling. There are close to 14 Sharingan eyes implanted in this arm, and this eye here, he held it up, was in his right eye socket. Clearly, someone made a lot of money from the Uchiha massacre. Many of the council members looked sick as he sealed them away. Others looked at Naruto with fear, awe, and respect in their eyes. But a few of them still tried to hide their anger. Tsunade took the scroll from Naruto with some doubt. Thank you. I'll look into this right away. Naruto gave a nod and got up from the table. As he did this, one of the people on the civilian council stood up. Hokage-sama, we applaud Naruto-san for what he did against a clear Konoha criminal and for what he has done so far to help Konoha win the war. However, I'm afraid there is a problem. Everyone looked at the member of the council. Some didn't care either way, but more than a few were very angry. He didn't care about their looks and kept going. Naruto-san went missing 4 years ago while on a training trip with Jiraiya-sama. He was reported killed in action, but we can see that he was not dead. If he is not dead, then he has left Konoha for the past 4 years. We have been at war with Kumo, Otto, and Iwa for close to 2 years now, and he, as a ninja of Konoha, should have come back. Hiyashi jumped to his feet right away. You have the nerve to call him a traitor when all he's done is help this rude and undeserving village? Others were about to join in, but Naruto put up his hand and stopped them. He gave Hiyashi a cold but also grateful look with his eyes. Then they looked at the regular person. I won't argue with you. I chose not to go back to Konoha, even though this village was making my life hell. As a shinobi from Konoha, I should have gone back to help. The member of the civilian council looked proud until Naruto gave him a smile. But there's something you're forgetting. Even if I did leave Konoha, it wouldn't matter. I can't be punished for crimes or betrayals I committed against Konoha in the past. Shikaku blinked, and then his eyes got much bigger. His work contract. Naruto nodded. Yes, Nara-sama. When my mom and I made our contracts with Konoha, we made sure that neither of us could be punished for our past crimes against Konoha, which included deserting. Since Naruto Namikaze and the Demon Dragon Rider are the same person, what the contract said about him also applies to me. As he slowly sat down, the member of the civilian council cursed in his mind. He was the only one who seemed upset, which was strange. Even most of the regular people there were nodding their heads. Naruto just nodded in response. He said, I know that next you'll probably all want to ask me to join Konoha's rank, but I can't do that. As Naruto turned, everyone said something. It's not that I don't like Konoha. It's just that I can't side with just one village. I know that sounds silly, since I've already sided with Konoha. But Iwa, Otto, and Kumo threatened the balance of this world, so I'm on the side that will fix it. As a demon dragon rider, it's my job to protect the balance of this world and keep it from falling into chaos. Kaharu looked at him. She asked, but why do you have to do that? Is it a sign or something? Naruto grinned and shook his head. No, it's not a prophecy. It's just my duty. I have great power you can't even imagine. If I wanted to, I could kill everyone in this room with a simple thought. That made everyone cringe, but Naruto laughed. Don't worry, I won't use it unless you deserve it, he said softly. But see, how could I let one village control that kind of power? It would only bring misery or death to innocent people. No, I can't belong to one village. I belong to all. Everyone saddened as they looked at him, but Tsunade softly nodded. I get Naruto, but I wish I could talk you into staying. Naruto was happy. He said, I can still come back to visit. Tsunade sat down and gave a nod. Homura gave her a look. What about Danzo? What's his punishment? Naruto cut Tsunade off as she was about to answer. If it's okay with the council, my mother and I have been talking about how to punish Danzo. If you give us permission, we'll do it as soon as we can. Everyone blinked, before Shikaku stood. I think I speak for everyone when I say that he and Kushina-san have earned that right. I agree. Almost everyone did the same thing, and Tsunade gave a nod. Okay, Naruto. You can start the execution whenever you're ready. I just want the council to be there to see it. Naruto blinked, then nodded slowly. He slowly put his helmet on and said, agreed. He said, well, I guess it's time to go see my sister. Konoha Hospital. Kushina was sitting next to Tayuya's bed. The nurses quickly got rid of the sedatives in her body and told Kushina that Tayuya would be fine if she got some rest. Besides her legs. Kushina looked at them from above. When she heard that her little girl wouldn't be able to walk again, she cried softly. The nurses said that even Tsunade couldn't fix the damage because it had been there for too long. They didn't believe it could have been fixed right away after it was hurt. She moved some hair out of her daughter's face in a gentle way. She put a gentle hand on her cheek and whispered, "Oh, to Yuya. I'm so sorry." The redhead woke up when someone touched her cheek, and her eyes opened slowly. "Ma. Mama?" she asked, tiredly, before falling back asleep. Kushina blinked, and then her face broke into a smile. She took Tayuya's hand in hers. "Yes. I am," she said in a happy whisper. After a few minutes, Naruto walked in. "Mom, the council knows about me and has accepted it. They have also given us permission to take care of Danzo ourselves as long as they are there to see it." Kushina grinned. She whispered, "Excellent," as she held the stasis scroll. "Excellent." Naruto nodded softly. "How is she doing?" She woke up for a second and then went back to sleep. The nurses said that she just needs to rest, but they also said that her legs. Kushina choked softly. Naruto blinked, turned, and then looked at Tayuya's legs slowly. He gave a soft sigh. Her spine was broken and out of alignment, and the chakra pathways to her legs were also badly damaged. She nodded. They said that even Tsunade can't heal her and that she'll never be able to walk again. Naruto closed his eyes and then smiled. He asked with a smile, "Did you forget who your son is?" "Onyxia, do you agree with that?" Outside the window, Onyxia's head was turned upside down, and she gave a nod. Naruto said that Kushina blinked. "I put her on the roof to watch over you and Tayuya." Onyxia grumbled and then pulled her head back. Kushina looked at him. "You mean that you can heal her?" Naruto let out a soft sigh as he looked at his sister. He shook his head. "It's possible, but it will be hard. She'll need to be sedated and held down. Putting the spine back in place and rebuilding nerves and tissue is hard on the body, even if she's sedated." Kushina's eyes filled with tears, and she gave him a hug. He smiled and gave her a hug in return. He said in a whisper, "She'll be fine. Trust me." Kushina only smiled and wiped her eyes. She whispered, "I do. I'm just worried. What if she doesn't want anything to do with us? With me? I don't want to lose her again after just getting her back." Naruto gave a head shake. "She won't be like that. At first, it might be awkward, but we'll find a solution." She nodded. "So, when do you want to talk to Danzo?" The look on Naruto's face changed. He said in a whisper, "Tonight. He dies tonight. At Anbu HQ that night." He opened his left eye slowly. He cried out in pain, which got worse. He couldn't see anything out of his right eye, which he knew was covered. His right arm hurt, too. Then he remembered what had happened, and when he looked to his right, he saw the stump of his arm. As Naruto came out of the shadows of the room, he said, "Finally awake, I see." Danzo tried to move, but his good arm, both legs, waist, and neck were all tied down. He growled at the person in black. "Well, what are you going to do now? You must know that Konoha will punish you for what you've done, right?" Naruto laughed, and a woman's voice came from behind him. Kushina came into his line of sight. "Konoha won't do anything against him," she said. "The council knows what you've done and has given the go-ahead for your execution. That's why we're here. They're actually watching." She pointed to a black-tinted window. Danzo blinked in surprise. Do they know who Demon Dragon Rider is?" Naruto had a laugh. As he came over, he said, "Yes, I've been cleared of any charges, past or present. Now, shut up." A sudden punch knocked Danzo's jaw out of place, making it hard for him to speak. "Now it's time to set you up for your execution, which won't be slow, no sir." The next hour was full of brutal and soul-shattering violence, along with the Warhawk Danzu's screams of pain. As soon as it was over, Kushina fell to the ground, panting and crying. Naruto gave her a tight hug as she cried. She got so much pleasure out of making him hurt, but now that Danzo was dead, she felt hollow and empty. She was ashamed of what she'd done. Naruto lifted her up gently and carried her out of the room. As the couple slowly walked away, many people moved away. The two of them went back to the Namikaze estate in silence. Kushina looked at Naruto. She whispered, "Why do I feel empty? After all he's done to us, why don't I feel happy?" Naruto hugged her. He whispered, "Maybe because, even though he did terrible things to us, he was still a person, and killing people shouldn't be fun. It shows that we are still people, too." Still, she just cried as she held her son. Naruto held her close while tears came out of his own eyes. He closed his eyes and thought about the memories Danzo had. In some strange way. We used to be the same. Onyxia put her head in and gave them both a gentle push. She made a soft, worried noise. Naruto. I told you too that doing it yourselves was a bad idea. Naruto looked at her from above. Onyxia. It was the only way we could find peace. You already know. He got angry with her. Onyxia jerked her head back and grunted. If this is the price you have to pay for it, you're better off not having closure at all. But what do I know? I'm just a dragon. She turned around and flew away, and Naruto closed his eyes and hugged Kushina closer. The day after. As Tayuya moved around in her bed, she groaned. What the hell happened? She thought in her mind. She opened her eyes a little bit, closed them again, and then opened them again. She looked around as she blinked her eyes to get rid of the sleep. She moaned, Where? The fuck am I? You're home. A quiet voice made her look to the side. A beautiful woman with blue eyes and red hair smiled at her in a soft way. Tayuya closed her eyes and groaned as she moved. Home? Fucking hell, I don't have a home. Where am I? Kushina blinked, but she didn't show how annoyed she was by Tayuya's language. You're in Konoha. And I'm your mother, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. Before she passed out, Tayuya's eyes got very big.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.